Hey, it's me, good. And I've been sitting in silence again, per usual. And it just dawned on me, considering fractal theory, considering empirical data of our day to day lives, what if it's about to get dark? So, you know, put your little kitties away and, if you're scared, you probably should scroll off of this. But and I have a feeling deep down inside that I am not the first person to ever think of this or say this. In fact, like I just have a knowing. And I haven't heard of this theory from anybody else, but that's what happens when you come into a state of gnosis. That's the whole point. It's like you just have these thoughts you just have this information that's already out there, been tested, tried and true. What if, because we're in the upside down and everything is in the reverse, right? What once was considered good is now bad, and what was once considered bad is now good, right? Because that paradox is happening. What if Satan is actually the good God who created us and is being imprisoned, and the God that religions have us worship is the false God who took over or overthrew the God, because you have the higher source, right? That made everything possible. And then you have the demigods and angels and things of that nature who helped create things or were had authority to create things. Because when you look at it like fractals, like from the mega source, from the 0 point, the beings are coming straight from the source all the way. Every incarnation goes into its fall, becomes like less perfect or less radiant, because it's further away from 0 point. And so you have most likely lots of gods who made lots of different people and lots of different galaxies and lots of different creations in life. And I feel like maybe the story of this galaxy, I feel like each galaxy has its own story and its own God. But the God of this galaxy was imprisoned, and a lie was told about that God. And that's why that God is the God who, Satan is the one who tries to enlighten us, to try to remember and like learn the truth, learn the divinity, and like bring us back, and like gives us all these gifts of like music and creativity and art, and is rumored to be the angel of that, and et cetera, all the little information that slips through the cracks, defining character points. And like our whole entire existence is trying to save ourselves and others from the pits of hell, literally. Like we are reflections of that. It's deep. It's very interesting. But it makes a lot of sense, especially if you really get into the text across the board, not just one person's story. You really get into the text across the board with all the major religions and even the minor ones. It's telling a story. It's giving that we've been lied to about more than what race we are, where we come from, or what land this is that we stand on. More has been switched around than that. And I feel like that's a story that's always been told. But the story about the devil actually being God, I don't think a lot of people talk about that. I know a lot of people don't talk about that. They don't want to talk about that. They don't want to, oh no, don't say that. And then also when you tie that into fractal theory, you can see how everything is always like a reflection. So when you look at like the lesser, the beings evolving or devolving, right? When coming from source, it's a de-evolution. When you see that, you can see like it's like the angels, and then you have like the ascended masters, and then you have the humans. And then if you notice the ascended masters stories, a lot of them are like full of like being overthrown, and then their identity being like stolen or switched. Like, look what happened to Jesus, like the King of Jews stuff, and like, being you know it's like a reflection of what happened to Satan. If you think deeply about like what the stories are, there's lots of them. There's not just one. You got to get into all of them to come to this point of understanding. If your scope is narrow, you may not be on the same page yet. But and then you can see it like in our lives as human beings. You can see how like our generations and our children and all of that like are reflections of us, just like a little chip off the old block, a little fractal, and it's just a reflection of what's going on. Like, it's just so much reflection going on. There's so much fractals, and you can see a glimpse of that if you pay attention. If you have eyes to see, you can see a glimpse of like what's really going on. And just how like even in this dimension, like even with history and artifacts, like most history and most artifacts are switched. They did the old switcheroo on them. Like everything in this galaxy, in this dimension, in this density is like switcheroo. Everything's switcheroo. So what makes Satan and God not switcheroo? You know what I mean? Like you see everything switcheroo, but we were put here to think and explore. And there's nothing wrong with being curious. Stay curious. See, I think the problem is a lot of folks, they just, as soon as they think a thought or hear a theory, they just turn it into a belief. Like, no, it's okay to have thoughts and like quandaries and queries, and you know what I mean? It's okay to just like let it be that, and put it in your pocket so that when you find other clues, you can add it to the pot. That's all I'm doing. But yeah, man, what a thought. And so that was my dark thought of the day. You're welcome.